another book review on video. This time I'm going to be talking about the novel Annabel by Kathleen Winter. It is a debut novel published last year, 2011. I just read it, finished it a few days ago, and I have to say that, like a lot of other readers of this book, I'm impressed with this. It's a debut. I think this is what you would expect more from a much more experienced writer. It's a wonderful read. It's very original. Personally, I haven't looked into it that much to know her background and where she's from, but the setting is quite unusual in a novel, at least for me. It takes place in Labrador, mostly in Canada. And I know very few other novels set there. I can't name any off the cuff. And I think that this is an exciting author to follow, because when she can manage this for her very first book, it's going to be really exciting to see what she's going to come up with when she gains more experience and just gets better at her craft, because this is a very good novel for a first book. It takes place in the 70s and 80s, as I say, in Canada, mostly in Labrador, in a very small town, a couple hundred people. And it is an original story too, with an unusual protagonist. Both usual and unusual, in the sense that it's a very unique person. He's born as a hermaphrodite, with both female and male genitals sort of combined, which of course is very rare. So it's a relatively extreme form of intersex. And of course at that time, there's no question, this is 1968, there's no question of this child just staying like that and growing up intersex. That's out of the question. So the doctors recommend that the child should be raised as a boy, and the child's father is, well, he's happy at the thought of having a son, so he basically decides that they're going to name the child Wayne after his own father, and they're just going to raise him as a boy. The mother is more uncertain that that's the way to go, but she lets her husband decide, because she honestly doesn't know what else to do. And she just more or less lets it slide. She lets other people decide this for her. And as time goes by, of course they have to do things medically to make the child a boy. Hormones and things. And it becomes more clear over time that this possibly was not the best decision, and that it's too easy to just say, this is the box we want you to fit into, that's how we're going to treat you, and if you just live up to all our expectations, everything will be fine. And if young Wayne could manage to live up to everybody's expectations, then probably he wouldn't have had any problems, because he does have loving parents, he does have, well, some friendships, and he does have a safe place to live. But you can't automatically fit into those expectations that other people have of you, because you also have more or less a duty to yourself, in the sense that you are the person that you are. And you can only change so much before you really lose yourself. And that is the way that Wayne, as he is called, is headed as he becomes a young adult. I'm not going to tell you a lot of details about the plot, because that would give it away, but it's a fascinating story with intriguing characters, and it's very well written. I have to say, my favorite part of the book almost is just the way that she describes the childhood of this young person, because whether we're boys or we're girls or something in between, the experience of childhood, I think, is not gendered, it's human. Being dependent on the adults around you, and being, on some level, we all are ignored and talked down to as wrong, but the adults very often, I should say we adults, I'm one too now, we tend to think that we know what's best, we have more experience, and while that is true, with every child, the world becomes new. For every child, life is something that is different. And I think this author, she describes it so well, the way that this boy is special. He has his own personality, his own interests, his own dreams, and the parents, especially the father, both struggle with understanding him because he's very different from them. The mother, she feels she understands the child well. The problem is that she understands the daughter that she doesn't have, and not so much the son that she is expected to accept that she does have. Whereas the father, for him, the gender doesn't really come into it. The sex of the child is not relevant. It's the differences in their personalities that makes it so hard for him to understand his child. And he does things that are damaging to their relationship, hurtful to Wayne, not out of any ill will, but just because he thinks he knows what's best, and he thinks he knows what needs to be done, and he just does it. And I really think that is such a human experience. We've all had that happen. We're all at risk of doing that to someone else. And I think she describes it so beautifully. She just really brings that to life. The whole experience of being young, being a child, seeing the world through your own unique set of concepts, dreams, ideas, wishes, feelings, and having to just somehow adapt to the world around you. And I think it's also a very interesting story of, at least towards the end of the book, as Wayne grows older, becomes more mature both emotionally and physically. It's an interesting place from which to examine how we see the world, how we see gender roles, and how narrow those roles are within our society. Because, yeah, this is like, at that time, she's moved up to like the 1980s, but still, that hasn't changed all that much. We like to think we're so open-minded, but in some things we're rather set in our ways. So it's interesting. I think it really resonates. It was probably worse back then, a lot worse, but still there are a lot of prejudices against people who are different in that way still today. So I think it's very interesting to go over some of that and just to be prompted to think a little bit about what ideas you have yourself, really. The one thing that I think quite a few people may dislike about the book is that it's quite open-ended and it's quite, some might say, vague. There are a lot of things she doesn't spell out, especially the ending. So if you're the kind of person who just needs to have all the loose ends of the story tied up and you have to know how everything turns out, then you're going to be pretty annoyed with this book because she leaves it all hanging, a lot of it. Not just the end, but places throughout the book too. You just have to have learned the characters, understood their reactions, and then you'll probably figure out what happens, what they do, but there are a lot of details that she could have put into the book which are not necessary to the plot, but might be interesting to the reader. She leaves them out, she lets you use your imagination on those, and I personally enjoy that. I think it works well. Others may not enjoy it, so consider yourself warned. If you really need all the loose ends tied up and everything explained, then yeah, you're gonna be kind of annoyed with this author and this book because she really doesn't do that. And I think it's fair to say, how could she? Because in the life of a human being, the loose ends are never all tied up. Everything can never be explained. So I think she does this very convincingly. It's in a lot of ways it's quite a sad book. It's deals a lot with situations where you feel like you know what to do what you should do, but because of social pressure, because of maybe pressure you put on yourself, the wish to conform, you do what you deep down know isn't right. I think that's something we can all recognize, that at some point in all our lives we do wish for more courage to be able to do what we perhaps know everyone, or at least most, will frown upon us for doing, will condemn us even for doing, but it will be a better choice than the choice we end up making. And there are definitely people in this book who struggle with that. I think even though it seems like a weird topic, an intersex child growing up in a backwater in 1970s Canada, it just deals with a lot of concepts and issues that are valid to all of us a lot of the time. They're basically just human. And I think it's interesting that she manages to do this very convincingly with this unusual story, which she does very well, both in language and characterization, in the setting. All of it. It's just a wonderful read all around. And I will definitely be looking out for more books by this author, because I think she's got a very interesting career ahead of her. Kathleen Winter. Her debut novel, Annabel. I recommend it.